Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, brought to you by our friends over at Briar Greaves Insurance. Are you looking to upgrade your car insurance? Well, let the great people over at Briar Greaves Insurance do the legwork for you. They will talk to different insurance providers and find the best price for you, your situation, and your family. They specialize in car insurance, but they can also help you out with homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance as well. So if you need to know more information about Briar Greaves Insurance, give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. It is a special day on the Pewter Report podcast and an emotional one as well, as legendary Bucs inside linebacker Lavonte David has announced his retirement from the NFL. All 14 years in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers. Pewter Report was on hand today at the Advent Health Training Center for his press conference, getting to talk to Lavonte David as well. So a lot to break down on a legendary career for Levante David. I'm Matt Matera. That's Scott Reynolds. Scott, it was hard not to go for the tissues when Levante was talking, especially about his parents. But a very emotional day, but I think one that kind of ends with a smile when reflecting on Levante and his career.
No doubt about it. He said, my 14-year career has come to an end, and it's time for Levante David to be a daddy to his little girl. And she stole the show today.
Yes, she did.
Logan, absolute gem right there. He said having a girl has helped him become a man. He said he loves the crew forever, meaning the Buccaneer fans. He said, at the end of the day, I'll always be a Buccaneer. Bucs forever. This was a tough decision for Levante David to make, but he was ready to let this generation of Bucs players take over. When it came to the discussion about the Hall of Fame, he was asked, are you a Hall of Famer? He says, my numbers do the talking. He's been playing football for 30 years, since he was 6 years old. And you can see there so many Bucs players in attendance. And keep in mind, this is the offseason. A lot of players are still on vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. But you see Cam Brate and Luke Gedeke and Anthony Nelson, Tristan Wirfs, Donovan Smith from the Super Bowl champions from a couple years ago, Tyke Smith, who he talked about afterwards as a potential captain on this team, Gerald McCoy, longtime friend, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Keith Tandy. He called his 14-year career a journey, and he was happy to prove people right. It meant a lot to only play for the Buccaneers. He said he started the battle and finished the battle in Tampa Bay, and he only did it in one uniform. The reason why he stayed, because of the phrase, it's greater later.
Mm-hmm.
He takes pride in being that I am that man's silhouette that Jason Light and the Bucs scouting department have put into place in their war room, looking for the next Lavonte David, which Jason Light said is going to be just about impossible to find because he's one of one. He got very emotional when talking about his parents. His mom died in 2016, and he almost stopped playing football at that time. The picture of his mother, and you and I have seen it every single day in the locker room. It is right there in front of his locker. That's a source of daily inspiration for Levante. The tough seasons, that decade of darkness we've talked about that he was a part of, he said that's what built his passion for football. He said, I didn't quit. I'm built different. Jason Light told him he's bringing in Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles back in 2019 for you, Levante. And he said that it was under that coaching staff that football was fun again for him. 30 years of playing football has given him a chance to take some time off. He mentioned broadcasting, coaching, and scouting as potentially what's next. And as I mentioned, he also mentioned Tyke Smith as a player that he thinks of as a little brother. That Tyke Smith told me he wants to be a team captain because he has admired Lavonte David's leadership so much. So it'll be fascinating to see who steps in Lavonte David's shoes and fills that leadership void. But truly, there will be no replacing Lavonte David.
There is nobody that can, fit the mold, fit the billing of Lavonte David to play his whole career here in Tampa Bay, the leadership role that he had. I thought it was very fitting what Todd Bowles had to say about Lavonte as well, where it wasn't just that he had an impact on everybody and that, everybody in the building. It was the type of leader that he was, because he wasn't just a rah-rah guy. He wasn't just a lead by example. He knew how to lead and how to deal with different personalities, and people take information and messages certain ways. So, Todd talked about how Lavonte would be the guy that would put your arm around his arm around your shoulder and talk about, how to get you better that way. But then he'd also be the guy to speak up and say, hey, we're not playing well right now. And, we got to get our, what together.
Yeah.
So just the all encompassing leader that Lavonte David was, it was super emotional when he was talking about how much his mother meant to him. But then, talked about his dad too, when his dad was sick in the hospital, and just, he was more concerned about everybody else around him. He talked about the nurse who seemed like she wasn't in a good mood. And Lavonte's dad talked about how, hey, it's all going to get better. It's all going to be okay. Everything's going to be great. And, just kindness and being kind to everybody around him and his family. And now Lavonte took that with the media and players, teammates and players that he went against and everything like that. Jason Light said that Lavonte was truly raised right.
Yeah.
It's easy to see, you've been covering him a lot longer than I have, but even just getting a chance to cover Lavonte, I mostly got Lavonte for the good times, but
right.
I could only imagine how it was during the tough times as well. So it seems like he was very much at peace with it too. Like, obviously it wasn't an easy decision, especially since the team, although they did not make the postseason, this has been the latter half of Lavante's career was the more successful from a team standpoint of his career. So it was not an easy decision. I also kind of cracked up a little bit when he's like, people always ask me what my hobbies are. I say, I don't know. My hobby was football. So good for him to have an opportunity to find some new hobbies and continue to be a father, which he's super passionate about as well.
It was interesting. He didn't say this in the press conference, but we had like a little media scrum afterwards with just the local reporters here. And I asked him about these new additions to the team. I mean, obviously everybody in the league knows Lavonte David, and in turn, he's a student of the game. He knows these players. He was very complimentary in speaking about Alex Anzalone.
Mm-hmm.
And he said Alex Anzalone came up to him, matter of fact, this year after that Lions game, and he says, like, you're my favorite player in the league.
Yes, that was
which was a cool moment. He said he's known Ashawn Robinson before he even got into the league, and he plays football the right way. And he said what we've been saying, Matt, that these new players they're bringing in, even Roseboom, he had some complimentary things to say. Al-Quadin Muhammad, he said, these are the guys that play football the way that it needs to be played on defense, with a hard-nosed, tough, physical playing style. And so he was happy to see these new additions come in, and he's excited to see how they're going to mesh with guys like Yaya Diaby, Kalijah Cansey, two players he also mentioned as potential leaders, players that are worthy of wearing the C that he wore on his chest for so long. So, I think he is at peace at this decision. The fact that it's coming now, he's had so much time to reflect. And I think the sting of the season and the way it ended without being in the playoffs has subsided. And I think this time has allowed him to make peace with this. And again, I go back to what he said. He says it's time for this next generation of Buccaneers to take over. And certainly he's done a fantastic job in mentoring and shepherding these young players. And now he becomes, like what Gerald McCoy said, he becomes a fan of the team, no longer a player, but a fan of the Buccaneers. So very emotional day at One Buc Place today. I was
no doubt about it.
A few times.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And the fact that he is the I am that man, the logo that you put up before, his impact, like we talked about when Tom Brady got here, and like how that's going to change the room and it's going to have an impact, and it certainly did. There's no doubt about that. But Lavonte David's impact will be here profoundly forever.
Right.
And like I get the sense that whatever he wants to do in his life, whether it's with football, which he talked about being open to that, or whether it's not in football, like we still see Gerald McCoy here a good amount.
Yep.
Lavonte in the offseason spends a lot of time in Miami. He's got enough money. It's not that far from Tampa,
Right.
if he wants to come on over, whether fly or drive, whatever the case may be.
I got a feeling he'll be in training camp.
Yeah,
just to watch and observe and see how the team is doing. Yeah,
honestly, just from talking to him today, hearing what he had to say, I got the feeling that, because he said, I've been playing football since I was 6.
Yeah.
And I dedicated everything to it. He essentially said, without saying, like, I've earned the right to kind of chill out for a little bit, which he absolutely does.
Yeah.
So I get the sense, because another thing he said, this was in the private scrum with local media, where he was like, essentially saying, a lot of guys say that they don't watch football after they retire. He said, that's not going to be me at all. But I do get the sense that maybe he won't be on hand with the game a ton in his first year of retirement, like still watching on his couch and everything like that. Yeah. But I almost feel like if he comes back for training camp, you're almost too close to it. Of like, okay, why don't you just unretire then?
Right.
But I think he'll maybe take a year off and then kind of pop up at training camp and things of that nature. So excited for what's next for Lavonte, because I think when we say that he's at peace, I think it's because, and Gerald McCoy talked about this a little bit, where one of the biggest struggles for players when they retire is that you're so used to structure and being regimented. And when that's taken away, guys don't know what to do. And, it could be scary at times. But I think Lavonte's got a great network around him. He was teammates in Nebraska with Will Compton. Yeah. They got a very popular podcast, Bussin' with the Boys. Yeah. And I think, now that I'm saying Lavonte's going to start a podcast, and, if he wants to, that'd be awesome. Love to promote it. But I get the sense of that he's talked to a lot of people and seen that the grass can be greener on the other side. And so I think he's in a good place overall. We'll see what he ends up doing, but I don't think he'll be too far away from the game that we love so much.
I agree. I think he is going to do a deep dive into being a father to that lovely girl right there, Logan.
Spitting image of Levante too.
And he loves kids. He started the Big Brothers and Sisters.
Yeah.
As his own
Levante's Legends.
His own charity here in Tampa Bay, which is fantastic. I remember having him out to a practice when I was coaching Pop Warner. I mean, he loved it. And I'll just be honest. Sometimes you would invite these players out, and this is up in Pasco County. A lot of them live in Hillsborough, right? So it's a bit of a drive. They go there. They say hi to the kids, talk for 5 or 10 minutes, take some pictures, and then they would leave. And that's fine, because these players, they have a life.
Yeah,
a lot of them would come on a Tuesday, which is their day off. Lavonte stayed the entire practice, just watching the kids, just watching youth football. Because again, he started Liberty City, 6 years old, playing football. He was talking about how his dad would drive him to practice. They only had one car, and the mom was working. She had to have the car. So the dad would put Lavonte on the handlebars, and they would ride the bike, miles to practice. And, that's something that really got to me. Oh my God, stories he was telling today about his parents. And of course, he lost his parents. And that's tough to lose your parents, but yeah, just a tremendous impact that he has had. And I think he said too, it's one thing to do all that stuff on the football field and be known as a player.
Yes.
But to be known as a person, and that's the thing he's most proud of, the person he's become. And boy, Logan has got a fantastic dad.
Yes.
And that she's going to see an awful lot of now. And that's going to be great for the both of them.
No doubt about it. Levante's in a really good place, which is exciting to see. And, he didn't even reflect that much about like his playing career. Right. It was all about the relationships. I mean, he went far back and mentioned his high school coaches. Yeah. He thanked Mark Dominic for drafting him. Obviously, he thanked, Jason Light and Todd and Bruce Arians. And, you mentioned before that he wasn't necessarily on board with, starting with the new coaching staff again. One thing Lavonte brought up that I think is super important is, when Todd Bowles came in, and obviously the relationship is great, and not that it was ever strained or anything like that, but part of the reason why Lavonte was a little hesitant is Lavonte had not played in a 3-4 type of defense just yet. So it was like, I don't know if I want to make this move, get to a 3-4. I played 4-3 my whole career. And man, what that second act for him playing in a 3-4 defense will mean for his career, which hopefully ends up with a gold jacket in the Hall of Fame. But I mean, fantastic person off the field. What he meant on the field to this team as well, just from the caliber of player that he was. You always think about your kind of lasting image as a player. Did you go out, maybe not exactly the way you wanted to, or the how good you were as a player, or did you go out kind of triumphant? And it's hard to say that you went out triumphant where you didn't make the postseason.
But that last game,
game, yes, to kind of go down or finish your season winning the last game, and Lavonte getting a signature turnover once again, I think was a great way to put a bow on his career, because he has some outstanding numbers, Pro Bowls be damned, and everything like that. He's one of the best players of his era,
no doubt,
and of his position, and in this franchise history, which has a lot of great defensive players. And for Lavonte to break through the mold, and we can be real about it. Everybody always talks about Brooks, Sapp, Lynch, Barber, everyone like that. Lavonte's name should be right up there, with the rest of them as well. So,
and Derek Brooks, the most decorated Buccaneer of all time, first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, he's the best linebacker in Bucs history, and that's okay. Just like Chris Godwin has had a tremendous impact on this franchise, won a Super Bowl, right? He has been that fellow superhero in the passing game with Mike Evans. It's okay that he's behind Mike Evans. He's still great, and And I thought one of the more interesting things about today's press conference was it seems like Lavonte, he would love to be in the Hall of Fame. Don't get it twisted, but he really wants to be in the Bucs Ring of Honor. And I thought that was an interesting little exchange. He was kind of making a pitch to the Glazers who were in the front row. He's like, I'd love to be in the Bucs Ring of Honor.
He said it'd be amazing. I thought there was like some sarcasm behind it, but he said it'd be amazing. He said, I'll gladly accept if the Glazers will have me, which so they were sitting front row. I'm pretty sure they're open to it.
That's certainly like a foregone conclusion here. And if I'm the Glazers, I'm doing to Levante what they did to Bruce Arians. You put him in next year. He's deserved that.
I was talking about that with Rick Stroud before. I was like, well, they did it pretty early with Bruce Arians. Why not do the same?
I agree
with Lavonte David. I think they should put in Lavonte before. I know there's been a discussion about like Tom Brady. You put him in the Ring of Honor.
I agree.
You got to put Lavonte in.
He's homegrown.
Yes, homegrown, 14 years. You got to put Lavonte in. Before Tom, and that can be discussion for another day. But within the next 2 seasons, put Lavonte in, because you want Lavonte to have his moment, especially after the Mike stuff, which we're not going to bring up too much, obviously. But you want Lavonte to have his moment in the sun. He had it today, but if you do it this season or next season, it gives more of the fans an opportunity to serenade him with praise, which he deserves.
Yeah, because he didn't have like, this is my last year, this is my last game. Give him that moment, and I think do it in 2026 here.
Yeah,
we have some super chats to get to.
Yes, we do.
We're going to kind of turn this show into yours. We'll have a couple of video clips to play in case you missed some of what Lavonte had, but definitely worth watching the whole thing on Buccaneers.com, because it was very emotional.
Super emotional.
I mean, he was your champion, folks.
Yes.
I mean, I know some of you maybe feel a little betrayed about how Mike left and all of that. And Lavonte talked about that with the local media. We'll get into that in a bit. But Lavonte was your champion. He took great pride in going wire to wire in red and pewter. And, was grateful to the crew. Mentioned, I'm a Buccaneer for life. Bucs forever and all of this. So it was great to see. We'll play some clips, but again, make sure you watch that on Buccaneers.com, because the whole thing was just a tremendous retirement press conference.
Henry Gigante, thank you for this $4.99 super chat. Says, regardless of how the season ended in 2025, Lavonte David needed to retire. His play really dropped off, but what an outstanding career he had.
It happens to almost everyone, unless it's an injury that robs a player of the last few years, and that kind of happened with Mike Allstott in his neck, right? 10 years, probably could have played a couple more years, a couple more good years. Father Time is undefeated in the NFL. He gets everybody. And I like the fact that he retired on his terms. He didn't have to be cut.
Yes.
Right. Sometimes teams have to do that. There is a business side to this game that is unfortunate and nasty, but that's just how it is. So for him to go out, it wasn't with the postseason win, but it was with the win. It was with a It was with a signature turnover, as you said, tying Derek Brooks's franchise
The
record.
fact that they tied is hilarious. And Lavonte mentioned that as well, that he had it in the back of his head, you know, trying to at least reach the record. And I don't know, it's just so fitting that it's Lavonte, because as much of a leader as he is and how important that he is, he's never been the guy to bring the attention on himself. And, you know, when Mike was here with the two of them, I think Mike got more attention. One, because it's wide receiver and it's just naturally that position gets in. Two, Mike had a lot of the records that we talked about where Lavonte's kind of, it was like, oh, damn, like Lavonte's close. It wasn't like this ongoing saga the way that it was.
For Mike to get that 1,000 yards.
Yes, exactly. And the way that it happened last season or 2 seasons ago now with New Orleans. So, for him to say that it was in the back of his head, for him to tie Derek Brooks, I think is so fitting for the caliber of player that he was. Kings are awful. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Says, question for the Glazers. You've been on record saying you want to avoid the dark days. Well, you kept a head coach fans hate. Mike left and Lavonte retired. How on earth are you selling this season to the fans?
You know, it's interesting. We did hear Joe Glazers say that again. I think they're scared to death of the dark days. And you know, everybody wants, I'm just going to put this like in school terms, grade terms. Everybody wants the A, right? You want to go to school. You want to get straight A's, whether you're a good student or not. You want that. You want the A. You want to make your parents proud. You want to get on principal's honor roll and those types of things. Sometimes you're not that good of a student and, you know, you have to settle for C's, right? C's are mediocre, but they're better than F's.
C's get degrees.
C's get degrees. Trust me, I was a C student. I know that. But C's are better than F's. And I do think there is something, and I'm looking forward to having some probably off-the-record conversations with the Glazers in Arizona at the NFL annual meeting in a couple of days to talk to them about this and to ask them that question. Are you just so scared of going back to the decade of darkness where you're just churning through coaches that you're willing to hang on to a coach with a 35-33 record and a 1-3 record in the postseason? Is something better than nothing? I don't know. But when I heard Joe Glazer say that again today, it just made me think about that. And you know, that's something that was said during the Raise the Flags documentary too.
Yeah.
They don't want to go back. And
because
like but shouldn't you strive for the A?
Exactly. Because part of the problem is like Todd will take you far enough.
Yes.
He won't take you to the final goal that you want, but he'll take you far enough to get in the conversation, to be hanging around, to have a shot at the postseason. Going into the last game of the season. But when you win the way that the Bucs won a couple of years ago, it raises the bar. It raises those expectations, and the fans are not happy with the expectations that have not been reached thus far. So that's kind of the dilemma that that everyone's in. But Jay Lewis has now been a Pewter Report YouTube channel member for 6 months now. Thank you so much for your support. Says Lavintage. What's your favorite Lavonte David memory / play?
I actually made up a word today, Lavintage.
Yeah, that actually ended up being awesome.
Yeah, I fumbled my question to Lavonte because
he forces a lot of those. So.
He does. You're exactly right. He forced my turnover there. No, I was getting, the moment caught me, and I was getting a little choked up when I was saying it, and I had literally like scrambled eggs in my brain for like about 10 seconds. And the funny thing is as I'm trying to spit out my question, and I was trying to reference that play, that Lavintage, as I said, that Lavintage play, that vintage Levante David play, that takeaway right there. And it came out Lavintage. And it reminded me so much of when my son Logan got up before our football team, right before our first division championship in Pop Warner. He was one of the youngest kids on the team. And Logan said, guys, we have to go tackle them. And he was trying to say attack them. But then he also threw the word tackle in there because he's a defensive player, and it came out a tackle. So I had my own little a tackle word today, Lavintage. And but you know what? It fits because Lavonte was nothing but pure vintage in terms of linebacker play, excellent play, defensive play. What's my favorite Lavonte memory play? I think it's two things that stand out. Number one, he had a pretty amazing. Actually, he had two amazing pick sixes. One in Jameis Winston's rookie season against the Eagles up there in Philly, an absolute annihilation. Jameis threw 5 touchdowns in that game, and Lavonte David had a pick six in that game. He also had a pick six against Phillip Rivers on the West Coast against the Chargers. Those are two like dynamic plays that kind of stand out. But to me, it was just about erasing Travis Kelce in the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's a great choice.
I mean, that was a back and forth like battle. Two guys that were like still in their prime, but just right on the cusp of starting the downward trend. And it was still a really good head-to-head battle, and it was back and forth. Travis made some catches, but he didn't make the plays. He didn't have the touchdown. He didn't have like
a big first down. Like that. Yeah, there wasn't an impact play.
Right.
I think that's a great suggestion right there because that's the pinnacle of what you want to do in the NFL is win a Super Bowl. And Levante played such a gigantic part of that. It's funny. I was going through some like pictures before because we wanted to post about Levante. So just going through some photos in his career. One that stood out, that they lost the game, unfortunately, but they were rocking the pewter jerseys against Joe Burrow and the Bengals.
Yeah.
And he hit the crap out of Joe Burrow and forced a fumble.
Yes.
That one kind of sticks out. He had a big game against Dallas. I want to say the 2022 season.
Yeah.
It was the season opener the following year. I believe he had a big game there. There's an awesome picture of him flexing a certain way, which was cool. And then again, just like clutch comes to mind when it comes to Levante. So we've referenced a lot that last game. Yeah. Let's remember, even though it was not a good defensive game, the win over the Seahawks when they beat Seattle came from a Lavonte David interception at the end of it. So yeah, those are some, honestly, my favorite Levante moments, and they happen a lot like during the 2020 season where it's just like Levante quietly would have like 15 tackles in a game. And I think that is kind of another just example of Levante. It's just the hard hat player he was. He brought his lunch pail to work, a ho-hum, 15 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and, a sack and a forced fumble. And a lot of that, really anything during the 2020 season, I think is not a bad answer either.
Yep.
Kings are awful. Thank you for the $2 super chat. We appreciate it. It says, in one off season, Bucs lost the heart and the soul. Yeah, I mean, I hate to bring it up. This goes back to an article I wrote where I said the Bucs are staring at a nightmare scenario where Todd Bowles is back, Mike Evans goes to another team, and Lavonte David retires. Unfortunately, all of those things happen. So it's another gut punch. I think this one slightly less for a couple of reasons. One, it felt like Levante was probably going to retire anyway. And two, the Bucs have kind of already started making moves to bring in new inside linebacker. So it's not like a what do they do now type of situation. They've already done it. Where with Mike, it is a little bit of like, what do they do now? They obviously have a lot of great pieces in place offensively, but there's a lot of questions with new offensive coordinator, all these other guys stepping up. Is Chris Godwin Jr. healthy enough and everything like that? So either way, it's someone in the comments before said, that Dr. Seuss quote of like, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And I think that's kind of the case with Levante right now, where Mike, it's a little bit more of a that's going to sting. Gut punch. That's going to sting for a while.
Speaking of that topic, that's going to be the topic of tomorrow's Pewter Report podcast at 4:00. Who picks up the slack in the Bucs passing game for Mike Evans? Will it be Chris Godwin? Will it be Emeka Egbuka? Who's going to step up and be not the next Mike, but who's going to replace some of those touchdowns? Who's going to be that go-to guy in the Bucs offense? Then on Thursday's show, the Bucs info we want to learn in Arizona. I'll be out there at the NFL annual meeting next week talking to Todd Bowles and Joel Glazer and Jason Light and trying to get some intel on and off the record. We're going to talk about what we want to learn from the next time we speak to Todd Bowles. We'll have a Pewter Insider on Friday, topic to be determined for our Pewter Premier and Platinum members. And then on Sunday, a special Pewter Report live Bucs mock draft. Josh Capo, Adam Slavon, and Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema. That's going to be a fun show. So looking forward to that. That's 5:00 on Sunday. Then on Monday, I'll be out in Arizona. We'll have Bucs coach Todd Bowles' presser reaction. I'll be there asking him some questions, and we'll have the reaction. I'll be live from Phoenix and talking with Matt and getting his comments about what Todd Bowles said. And also we'll have a chance to talk to Jason as well. Then on Tuesday's show, Bucs co-chair Joel Glazer with a press conference reaction to what he has to say. So that looks like it's going to be a pretty interesting week for some Bucs news. We're going to get some answers to a couple of questions that we're going to have for Todd Bowles and for Joel Glazer. So I'm looking forward to that as well. I just got confirmation too from David Walker. Would you like to have David Walker on the show on Thursday?
Would love to have David Walker.
Well, we're going to have
show.
David Walker, Bucs outside linebacker, just texted me.
Awesome. Let's go.
And we're going to have him on Thursday's show. So
that was fantastic. I mean, Jason Lay had a lot of awesome stuff to say about David Walker when speaking to him last week about his rehab and that situation. But I mean, it'll be super cool to get his perspective, one, on how he's doing personally, but I don't know, his overview of the team, in his rookie year, how kind of odd this season was for him, just watching it from the sideline versus being able to, kind of help out as well. So always love when we have players on the show, and we can now add David Walker as a friend of the program.
Yeah, we're going to have David Walker on Thursday's show at 4:00. So that will replace the information we want to learn. Maybe we'll move that up for tomorrow's show. We'll talk about that. But so we have David Walker coming on the show on Thursday. So looking forward to talking to him. A lot has been said about his game, and we haven't really seen much, but we're going to hear from David Walker. I had a chance to interview him earlier this year. So that's going to be on Thursday's show. Make sure you're here for that. Great young man too. I'm excited to really see what he can do. Continuing on with our super chats, Matt.
Yes, thank you to Broseph for the $4.99 super chat. Says there's been some frustration this offseason, but with Mike leaving still fresh on the mind, I'm thankful I can see Levante retire at Buccaneer. I think that's a really great point and a great perspective as well. It is so rare in all of sports, not just football. It's so rare that you see a player have a legendary career, which Levante absolutely did, and stick with one team. And I know it didn't happen with Mike, but it happened with Lavonte David. Extremely rare. And if he gets in that Hall of Fame, there will only be highlights in a Bucs uniform.
That's right. I'm going to say one thing real quick, and I'm not trying to sell season tickets for this Buccaneer team. I'm not trying to be a cheerleader or spin. And Matt, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So if you agree, then say it. And if you don't, then that's your right too. Baker Mayfield, Tristan Wirfs, Chris Godwin, Bucky Irving, Tyke Smith, Yaya Diaby, Anton Winfield Jr., Luke Gedeke. There are so many, Cody Malk. There are so many really, really good players.
There's talent to be optimistic about, for sure.
Really, really good guys in this team. And I know some of these guys haven't been there as long as Lavonte David and Mike Evans have. Tristan Wirfs is going to be a Hall of Famer, folks.
Yes.
I mean, he is.
There's no doubt in my mind.
And I'm sorry, he's sexy for an offensive lineman. I mean, offensive line play, usually not sexy. Tristan Wirfs scored a touchdown
He did,
year,
Doesn't get better than that.
So I'm just saying, it's like, I get the feeling about the gut punch that it was with Mike Evans leaving and Levante's retirement. It stings. It was inevitable, but it still stings. Todd Bowles, not Mr. Popular. I get that. There's still a lot to like about this Buccaneer team. And I don't know if they're going to be better than 8 wins or not. That remains to be seen. I'm not trying to trump this team as, they're back or whatever, but this is not the dark days. This is not
correct.
Gerald McCoy, Levante David, and nobody else. Because there was a roster like in the early, 2010s where that was the case.
Right. I think a good way to describe this team going into the season is name your opponent. I don't know if they're going to win or lose because they could beat any team and they could lose to any team where,
That's
some
fantastic.
of those, there's some of those dark days, you knew they were going to get pummeled.
Yeah.
Like you knew there wasn't a chance.
Didn't
On
have
the
a
flip
chance.
side, the 2020, 2021 team, it was like, how much are they going to win by? This current team right now, they're playing Detroit.
Yeah.
Hey, they can beat them. They can also get smoked on national television.
Enjoy the mystery.
Exactly. It's an absolute enigma going into the season. But there's no doubt they're not like a 4-win team that, maybe they'll win a couple of games and that's it. No, they'll be in every game.
Right.
They'll get, I mean, the way that Bowles has coached them, they'll get smoked here or there, but they'll be competitive for a majority of them.
God, please just don't lose 4 in a row. That's rough.
Yeah.
That
Can we cut that in half? Only making a 2-game
Yeah,
losing streak?
that month of doom and gloom that is perpetual.
And because it was at the end of the season, too. And jeez. Jamie Miles, thank you for the $2 super chat. Says, Payne, standing in the rain. Love you, Levante. I thought about listening to Green Day's Time of Your Life on the way over to the building. I did not, because I did not want to get too emotional, especially after Levante was speaking as well. But love seeing fans show their appreciation for Levante. He deserves it. Meets McGee, thank you for the $5 super chat. Appreciate him. Says, I watched Steve Smith podcast. He had Thomas Davis on talking linebacker prospects. He said Anthony Hill Jr. reminds him of Levante. Have you evaluated him yet?
I have. I've not put the period or the exclamation point on that evaluation yet. For some reason, I can't fall in love with Anthony Hill yet. I've got to go back and watch some more tape, because sometimes this team will draft a player that I kind of dove into, but I didn't do maybe like a deep dive into. And I'm like, what did they see that I didn't see? Right. Sometimes I'll go back and see it. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, I didn't go far enough into the tape for this player. I've watched some Texas games. There's been some good and some bad. There's other linebackers I like better. I've made no bones about the fact that I love Jacob Rodriguez and I really, really like CJ Allen. I think those are the 2 top guys on my board. And I like, Golday from Cincinnati. I like Hill, but I'm not to the love point yet. But I'm going to go back and watch some more tape on him, because physically he checks a lot of boxes. I think there are some instincts there. Certainly productive. I've got to do a little bit more of a deeper dive, but not a bad player by any means.
Moving on to Realtor David Zussman. Thanks for the $9.99. Says, so many years hearing how unselfish Evans was and how he puts the team over stats. David showed with actions throughout his whole career that he is a Buck for life.
Yeah.
Sad to see him go. 54 forever. Yeah. Very well said. All valid points of just kind of leader, and that's why he is that man.
And we're never going to see a Buccaneer wear 54 again.
That's also true.
I mean, that's kind of the cool thing. It's like, there have been some really great players leave this organization, right? Shaq Barrett recently, his impact helping this team win a Super Bowl. Jason Pierre-Paul, even Hardy Nickerson, right? Simeon Rice. I mean, some guys that were legends in Tampa Bay. They didn't have their numbers retired. We're not going to see 13 again. Yeah. We're not going to see 54 again. And that's a good thing, because they will forever be tied to those legends, Mike Evans and Lavonte David, just like 40 is Mike Allstats.
Correct.
55 is Derek Brooks. 99 is Warren Sapp. That's 20 is Rondé Barber. I mean, that when you're in that icon legend status like that, nobody else gets to wear your number. That's kind of a cool thing.
They will be synonymous.
Yes.
Those numbers. Which, it's super meaningful. Kings are awful. Thank you for the $2 super chat. Says this team failed in finding the successor for 54. Well, we'll see who they end up drafting this year. I do understand the criticism of, hey, you knew Levante was going to retire relatively kind of soon. Like, why not get ahead of it? I think that criticism is very fair. They could have got ahead of the ball last year in the draft, although it wasn't, that good of a draft class. They could have done it 2 years ago. Like they could have prepared for this a little bit more. But if they knock it out of the park with this inside linebacker that they end up drafting, then I think all is forgiven.
Yep, for sure.
Meets McGee, thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, so the Glazers scared of the dark days. Does that mean they don't trust Jason Light's decision making? I said they need to allow Jason to do his job.
Good question. I think they definitely trust Jason. I really believe that they trust Jason, meaning I think they would fire Todd Bowles before they'd fire Jason. Jason just has the track record of everything from drafting Mike to re-signing Levante to bringing in guys like Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, and Ndamukong Suh to help this team win a Super Bowl. Not just drafting Mike, but drafting Chris, the top 2 receivers in franchise history. That's hard to do. Name another general manager around the league that has drafted literally the franchise's top 2 wide receivers. I don't know if there is one, right? And you look at the track record. Jason has worked with 4 coaches.
Mm.
He didn't hire Lovey. Lovey hired him. He didn't hire Todd. Todd was given the job by Bruce Arians, who retired on March 30th back in 2022. So he's 1 for 1 on his own standing alone coaching hires. Dirk Cutter, who was the promotion over Lovey, didn't work out. Bruce Arians luring him out of retirement certainly did. Helped his team win a championship. I think they trust Jason. And I just think that they're giving Todd 1 more year. That they've said, well, 3 years, yeah, the overall wins and losses haven't been there, but we have those cool banners hanging up in the practice facility. They've won the division title. It beats the alternative. Look at the Atlanta Falcons. What, 3 straight years of 8 and 9 records?
Yeah.
4 now. I think they had 3 with Arthur Blank. So, again, it's, is it what you want? No, it's not a 12-win season or whatever. I think this team has underachieved in some of these seasons. They've lost games they shouldn't have lost. But we'll see. At some point in time, they will get tired of mediocrity. We even saw that with Tony Dungy. They have a track record of doing this. When the record went from 11 wins in 99 in an NFC championship game appearance in St. Louis, to 10 wins and a first-round playoff exit in Philly, to 9 wins and a first-round playoff exit in Philly. When that slide started from 11 to 10 to 9, that's when they made the switch. And if we don't see this thing shoot up to double-digit wins, in my opinion, or a deep run in the postseason, then I think they'll probably move on from Todd Bowles.
Right.
And they should.
It's difficult to gauge exactly, other than just like another poor losing season, what would be the straw that broke the camel's back, because there's a big argument to make that last season, losing all these games that they should have won, against the Saints, blowing it against Atlanta, Miami, everything like that. Those should have been the proverbial straws that broke the camel's back. And if that kept Todd around, what would it take to ultimately move on from him as a head coach? Only the Glazers can decide that. And I think that's the part that's a little fearsome is, does a 9-8 record keep Todd around? Does it have to be that bad to, ultimately decide to move on? It's tough to guarantee what it would be.
There's no guarantees in life, but one thing that I'm pretty sure of is if you have the Jorgensen attorneys in your corner when it comes to personal injury, when it comes to workers' comp issues, or when it comes to Social Security, you pretty much have a better chance of winning your case.
At Jorgensen Law, we aren't just a law firm, we're a family business. For over 30 years, our firm has stood up for people when they need it most. Our family represents individuals and families who are injured or disabled and are facing some of the most stressful, difficult moments of their lives. From personal injury and workers' compensation to Social Security disability claims, we know how overwhelming the process can feel, and we believe each client deserves personal attention.
We fight for you like family, and we charge no fees or costs unless we recover for you. If you've been hurt or can't work due to injury or illness, call Jorgensen Law at 727-347-7733. Experience, integrity, and advocacy you can trust.
That's right. Make sure you give Jorgensen Law PA a phone call or visit them on the web at jorgensenlawoffice.com. Matt, let's dive into a couple of comments that Lavonte David made today. And if you didn't have a chance to watch the press conference, you can watch a couple of clips now. And we encourage you to watch all of it at Buccaneers.com or on the Buccaneers YouTube page. A very emotional press conference for sure, but here's a couple of clips that stood out.
Yeah, so his opening speech, you could see it on our social media as well, along with some of these clips. So after his speech, he did answer some questions. This first one, he talks about how difficult it was to come to the decision to retire versus playing again.
Decision and gave you the peace at the right time to step up.
Yeah, it was extremely tough. Obviously, I was going back and forth with it for a very long time. But luckily, I have nobody in my account that kind of pressure me into make decisions. From both sides, family and the organization, gave me a little time to just think things through and just figure out what I want to do, what I genuinely want to do. And I just felt it was time. Like I said, man, I never dreamed of, playing 14 years in the NFL. I never, dreamed of playing 14 years in one organization. It's been an incredible journey, and I feel like it was just time for me to just, move on and let the next generation, take over and, just move on and find my next passion, my next endeavor. When, I got in the league, this is all I was focused on, just football. And it got to a point where it's just like, and people used to ask me, man, what's your hobby? I said, I got one hobby, it's play football. And that's something that kind of like dawned on me too. Like, I just got to figure out, my life, my own path, and, kind of go from there.
This next one, Lavonte was asked by Scott about, what it meant to have one more signature Levante David moment, being able to win and create a turnover in that game as well.
A Levantage moment.
What is your reflection on that game?
It was a fun game to be a part of. Just was at stake. The type of record that was in the back of my mind, obviously, and what could have happened in the future. Unfortunately, outside of that, things that happened didn't go the way we wanted to go. But my whole thing was to play my heart out, no matter what. That's just my MO. Every time I'm out on the field, these guys are in here know how I am. They count on me to be my best. It's just a standard that they hold me to, and it's a standard that I hold myself to. And each time I prepare, I try to prepare that I'm at my best. That play my best, full effort, and I never want those guys to question, whether I played my best or not. Whether it's from my very first game or from my very last game, I always wanted to go out the same way I came in. That's just trying to be the best on the field.
We spent a lot of time on the show talking about the importance of Lavonte being a Buck for life. This is why he wanted to be one.
They won't let me go. I'm joking, man, but nah, for real, man. It's just, I built so many great relationships here. A lot of people, like I just said, touched on, man. A lot of people who I built relationships with here, kind of like, impacted me in different ways, and I couldn't just, up and leave. When I started a battle, I want to finish the battle, and I always say, man, things get greater later, and that indeed it did. And I'm thankful for the Glazers, the Bucs, Jason, Coach Bowles, Coach BA, those guys, wanted me, to stick around, wanted me to be around to help, continue to mold this program into what they want to do. And, and I think, I was a big part of getting the job done. As you can see, we got guys in the locker room who, it's auditorium guys who, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield, Taki, my little bro. I can't see nobody else. But, dang, Nelly. Guys like that, man, who, kind of like the foundation of what it takes to be a Buccaneer. And, guys who I played with in the past, Donnie, Gerald, those guys, JPP, who's not here, I talked to him before we got here. Those guys are, people who I want to be around, people who I want to, build with, people who I want to win with. And those guys can tell you out their mouth, man, I'll do anything for them. And, it's just something about, obviously, just something about just sticking with what you start with. And, it takes you a long way. And that's just something that, like I said, man, it's something that I never dreamed of. It ended up happening, but I represent it with pride.
And as we know, the I am that man mantra and that motto is named essentially after Lavonte David. And Lavonte spoke about what that means to him.
It's incredible, man. Like I said, you look around, you see it. You see the guys who we got, the dogs that we got, guys who I, take the field with any day. I won't mind walking through a dark alley with those guys, regardless. It's just, but it's incredible. I found that out, a couple years ago when I was doing my signing, and Jason talked about it. It just kind of caught me off guard. I'm like, what? Like, that's what y'all go by, So that kind of like made me straighten up even more. Like, hey, I gotta, kind of like walk on eggshells right here now. But nah, man, it's just, that goes to show, what this organization, what the future holds for the organization. Winning football, underdog mentality, go out there and every game play like it's your last. And you got guys in here who's going to do that, and I know that's for a fact. Because, if you didn't have those guys, I wouldn't be, preparing to retire. I just know this organization is going to be in a great place. And I know guys, around going to be able to, lead this organization to the promised land.
All right, we'll round out the show with a couple more comments and super chats, starting with Alec Bickler, who's been a member for 9 months now. Thanks for your support, Alec Bickler, who says, dream scenario, Bucs should trade back to the Arizona Cardinals at 15 so they can draft Ty Simpson, and we can get their 2027 first-round pick.
Ooh.
It could be a top 5 or a top 10 at least. We may still get Jacob Rodriguez and R. Mason Thomas, too.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. To pick up a first rounder next year. I think if there's one criticism I have for Jason Light is, and maybe it's just because he's re-signed so many players, they don't lose a lot of players, they don't get the compensatory draft picks. It seems like this team has like 7 or 6 draft picks, and they don't have the plethora of draft picks that other teams do by doing some of these strategic trades, stockpiling picks for the future. And some of it too is just it's circumstance, it's happenstance, right? It takes 2 to tango, and if the Baltimore Ravens at number 14 are the ones getting the calls for Ty Simpson rather than the Bucs at 15, there's nothing Jason Light can do about that.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, wouldn't hate that scenario. Getting a first-round pick from a bad team is never a bad thing.
We do have some awesome people, not bad people, awesome people. There are Pewter Platinum members.
Yes.
We're going to let this scroll across the bottom here and thank them for their contributions. And if you want to become a Pewter Report TV channel member, you can do so. Hit the join button. And we're now over 22,800 subscribers. That's the free stuff. Hit the subscribe button. It's free to do. But if you want to join Pewter Report TV, get access to our Pewter Insider podcast on Fridays at 1:30. You can become a Pewter Premier Platinum member and do that. Greatly appreciate all the support.
Yes.
Y'all are sending me out there to Arizona. That's where our travel budget comes from. So it's because of you and your contributions to our channel that make us traveling to some of these important events possible. So thank you very much. And we want to thank our Pewter Platinum members as we thank our Super Chat
we do.
Members as well.
Yes, appreciate each and every one of you. And thanks to Eric Cullison for this $4.99, who says, so sick of hearing about a 4th-round FCS player who didn't make it out of the first week of training camp. Draft Jacob Rodriguez and R. Mason Thomas, please.
Well, that's a little harsh for David Walker. I mean, he
soon to be friend of the program.
Yeah, he tore his ACL. I don't think it wasn't because he couldn't make it out of training camp. It just he got hurt, and it's a very unfortunate injury. And it was a bit of a gut punch to this team. I remember Larry Foote coming up to me the next day, where I think it was maybe a couple of days after we found out that he was going on injured reserve, and he's like, he was going to be a big part of what we were going to do.
Yeah, plus, like, David Walker doesn't factor into what Tampa Bay wants to do this year as well in terms of, like, who they want to draft and stuff like that. We've always said he's a bonus player this year.
Yep.
Meets McGee, thank you for the $2 super chat, says Brady pushed for 2 guys. Devin White pushed for Lenny. Well, it all worked out. They won the Super Bowl.
That's right. That's right.
Bulim Seba, thank you for the $4.99 super chat, says they were able to draft Campbell or Schwarzenegger. Yeah, Schwarzenegger last year. Hope they don't miss this time if trading up for outside linebacker / Styles, Sonny Styles, or down for Rodriguez. Why not?
So the thing is they liked Schwarzenegger more so than Campbell, and probably would have drafted him if Emeka Egbuka wasn't on the board. Would have been a great pick. I mean, Schwarzenegger's turned into a really good middle linebacker, and certainly I think he would have replaced Servasi Dennis next to Lavonte David. But they needed Emeka Egbuka. This team won 8 games last year. If they didn't have Emeka Egbuka, they don't even win 8 games. Right? He won single-handedly just about with some touchdown catches in the last moments of the first 2 games of the season. And he was the most productive receiver on this team on a team that had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but they missed a lot of time due to injury.
That they did.
So it's hard to knock Emeka Egbuka, who is going to be a big-time star in Tampa Bay moving forward now. Almost had 1,000 yards this season, 6 touchdowns to lead the team. It's hard to imagine a receiving core right now without Emeka Egbuka. Sure, you'd love to have Carson Schwarzenegger as a linebacker, but you can't have both. So I don't think we should fault the way it worked out, because imagine right now if you had Chris Godwin,
right, and Jalen McMillan,
and Tez Johnson, and those are your receivers. That's
a fair point, because you lose one strength, you'd help another. Yeah, and then ideally the Bucs would be looking at a wide receiver in the first round. All these mock drafts would be so different, but that's how it went about. So. A couple of comments to get to. We like this one from King Reckless, who says, add Lavonte David to the Pewter crew. Scott, my boy, needs a job now.
Yeah.
Hey, if he gets into broadcasting, we have an open, I don't want to speak for Scott, but open invitation for Lavonte David to be to come on the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, if he wants to get into broadcasting, would love to have him test his chops on the Pewter Report podcast.
We've had Lavonte, or I should say, Rondé Barber on a couple times. We'll have Rondé on again this offseason. He's enjoyed, having his own show, the Rondé Barber Show on News Channel 8 on the WFLA YouTube channel. And so it would be cool to have Lavonte as a media colleague now if he decides to go into broadcasting.
Yeah, and cool. Some guys have worked in the media after Bucs related, like Rondé you just mentioned. Cam Brate does a show here with the Bucs as well. So yeah, I think it'd be cool.
Yep.
And then Quay UF5 VT says, did Lavonte say anything about Mike Evans' departure?
Yeah, he did in the media scrum, the local media presser after the big press conference. We had Lavonte in the smaller media room, and he was asked point blank, did Mike Evans' retirement have anything to do with your decision? He said no. He said it really didn't. He respects Mike for that decision. He said he knew how difficult it was for Mike. He's like, that hurt Mike to leave, but he also understands that because Mike is just a competitor. He just wanted a new challenge, and he said that hurt Mike to leave, and he's always going to be a part of the Buccaneer lore and the Buccaneer community, and I'm sure he'll continue to do things with Buccaneer charities. This is what Lavonte was saying about Mike, and I believe him. I think that those two had a bond as being here way back in yesteryear during those dark days. They went through it together, and they have got a little bit of a special bond because they put in so much time with the team, especially those years where they didn't have success.
Yeah, Levante even mentioned that Mike knew about his retirement, about Levante's retirement, several days beforehand, so it didn't come as a surprise to him. And didn't really want to speak too much on that's Mike's own situation and his own preference. He can't speak for Mike's feelings, but the relationship's still really good there. CJ, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Says, at this point, I have to ask: is David Walker going to be the next Lawrence Taylor? Because the way he gets talked about has me thinking. No shade to him.
Yeah, I think what I like and appreciate about David Walker is, again, the fact that, and I've kind of been driving this point, and Matt, you and I have been talking about this really since last, football season, where we've talked about how they just missed on so many of these draft picks, these premium picks, the Joe Trine-Schwinkas, the Logan Halls, the Chris Braswells. I think out of those three, Logan Hall is probably the best one.
Yeah, for sure.
He just underwhelmed as a pass rusher. But it's created a little bit of a hollowness on the defensive front. Then you throw in a missed free agent signing and Hassan Reddick that just was a bust. And so it's been something we've been studying and kind of pressing and poking, this franchise about, to the point where I've gotten some nasty texts from people in the front office, saying, we know, you don't have to keep pointing it out. I'm like, okay, but I'm also doing my job.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm putting some pressure on the organization by making it public.
Yeah,
right.
Going no huddle right now.
That's right.
Trying to go fast paced, put the pressure on the defense.
And so, and I think in my latest Pewter Pulse video, I kind of touched on this too, where they've drafted a lot of guys that have had 1 year wonder in terms of sack production. I'm just talking about sacks and getting after the quarterback here. And that's how it kind of gets into this David Walker topic, because you look at Joe Trine-Schwinke, he had 2019, eight and a half sacks that 1 year, but like a sack or two the year before. Same thing with Chris Braswell in 2023 at Alabama. Dallas Turner, Will Anderson Jr. leave, and he finally gets a chance to play because he wasn't good enough, honestly, to beat either one of them out, right? So he gets a chance to play and then has a 8-sack season. Same thing with Logan Hall. Barely any production. Then his final year at Houston in 2021 as a defensive end, he got 6.5 sacks. But this is a guy who, granted it was against a lower level of competition, 39 sacks in 4 years. The floor was 8 sacks. He had no fewer than 8 sacks in any of those seasons. And then he had 2 seasons with double-digit sacks, including a 12.5 sack season. He's proven he can get to the quarterback. Granted, it was against a lower level of competition, but then he goes to the Senior Bowl, proves he belongs there, got a sack in the Senior Bowl game. We'll see. We'll see. But I like the change in methodology here that we're seeing in this front office, going with production over potential. And ultimately, it's up to David Walker to determine if he's anything other than, a 4th-round pick out of Central Arkansas. But I like that this is a change in the narrative from the players they've drafted.
I think the great performance at the Senior Bowl and in the game, to me, is the key in all of that. Because there's no arguing the production. You just put all the numbers out there. Right. You can't argue that. But you can argue, okay, it was against smaller competition. Right. What's it like if he would have went up against, the Big Ten guys and SEC guys or whatever. And then you can times that by 10, essentially. What about going against Tristan Wirfs and Luke Gedeke and those offensive tackles? And the fact that he did get hurt before we could even really see that, again, I don't know what that says about, we can't make it in the NFL. But, I'm definitely taking his season with a grain of salt. I'm not going to say he's the most amazing thing and he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. That's not even fair to David Walker. Yeah. He's been getting a lot of hype, though, and that's the message we've been relaying to everyone else. Todd Bowles said it during OTAs. He was like, Walker was the most impressive. Yep. Jason Light was singing his praises. What else do you want us to do besides relay that information to everybody? So I definitely understand understand maybe the little bit of overhyping, but again, we're just relaying the message. Yeah, that's right.
And honestly, that's our job. Our job is to just like when we do these Bucs best bets that we're going to do, and we do our mock drafts, it's not necessarily who we want this team to draft. Now, I want Jacob Rodriguez on the Buccaneers. That's no surprise. I think speak for Matt too. He's a huge fan. We saw him in action at the Senior Bowl. And guess what? They had a formal interview with him. He's on their radar. So, but when we do these Bucs best bets and when we do our Bucs mock draft, we're trying to forecast who the team is going to pick. That's what our job is, not to grandstand or cheerleader campaign for players. We'll say our own favorites. We'll have our own commentary about who we like, but our job is to say these are the players the Bucs are targeting. We found out this information, and we think these are who might be on the radar to draft.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt about it. CJ with another super chat. This is of $1.99. Thank you very much. Says owners/GM need to watch your production/potential video. Please do.
Yeah, please do. They already might have that video sent to them. Maybe we'll see. Maybe it's already happened.
But you can see us again tomorrow. We're going to have another Pewter Report podcast at 4:00. We were going to do who picks up the slack in the Bucs passing game. We may pivot though, and get into what info we want to learn from the Bucs while they're in Arizona.
Let's do that. We'll do that tomorrow.
And then Thursday, David Walker, the man of not the hour because that's Lavonte David, but the man of the last 5 minutes. David Walker will be joining us on Thursday, so super excited for that. And then we have a lot coming down the pipeline as well. Live mock draft show coming up on Sunday at 5 p.m. Josh Capo, Abs Levon, Trevor Sycamore.
Yeah, buddy.
We've done podcasts in this room.
I know.
I think there's been some reconstruction, but we've essentially done podcasts with Trevor in this room.
Yeah.
He'll be on. And then we'll learn more about what Todd Bowles had to say, his press conference in Arizona at the NFL annual meeting, followed by Joel Glazer on Tuesday, our reaction to that as well. So there is a lot coming up.
Yeah.
It's going to get busier and busier here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So make sure you join us all on the Pewter Report podcast, as Realtor David Zussman says, Jacob Rodriguez should be a top priority in our draft plan. Absolutely, positively. So definitely agree with that. And all right, to cap off the show, would love if everybody please follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at Pewter Report, and our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. So please like and subscribe. Leave a comment on this video as well. Tell us, there was a question that we got before, your favorite moment about Levante David. Anything that stands out to you about him, a play, a game, whatever. We'd love to see everyone's favorite moments about Levante David. So that's it for this afternoon show. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching. Congratulations again to Levante David. I am that man, number 54, Levante David, on a fantastic season.
Out.
And we will see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.